Our next speaker is, he's coming into his second full season as the director of the Bridger Teton Avalanche Center. Comes to us from the Mount Washington Avalanche Center. It's been really fun to get to know Frank, and as one sort of OG guide to another, I get his sense of humor, and if you can get that he's pretty deadpan, and he's actually pretty funny, really he is, and he's really skilled, and he's got this incredible vision for what the Bridger Teton Avalanche Center can be, and I think we're well on the path to becoming something new and something that we as the end users and the contributors with our observations, that we don't quite have this vision yet. So I'm thrilled that Frank is pushing us and pulling us and tugging us along the way. So here we go. Frank's going to talk to us about the website and his vision for the center.
Well, just one quick correction. It has actually been 3 years, though my first year was pretty forgettable, I guess, really. Like any good manager, you know, you don't want to change anything the first year. So, like, I was basically not here.
It's your second full year.
This is my third.
Math is hard. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'll check my calendar later. So I just want to talk a little bit here. I've got 20 minutes, so I want to talk about a couple of incidents. I thought, one incident, and then give you an update about what's BTAC going to be up to this year. The Poker Creek avalanche fatality that occurred was pretty, I think, a good learning opportunity, not just for snowmobile riders, but I think in general for anyone who travels in the backcountry for several reasons. So I just want to back up, give you a little geographic history. Has anybody ever skied way down in the Salt River Range? A couple people. Yep, it feels like you're way out there. You kind of are way out there. It's basically 2 hours or hour and 40 minutes from here just to the trailhead. Though that area is less than 3 hours from Salt Lake, about 2 hours from Rock Springs. And it's pretty heavily used by those that live nearby. Plus the folks that travel here. This is, I don't know if anybody is aware, you know, the skiing here is pretty good. Probably have heard that. Some people would say probably the best in the country, one of the best kind of meccas. Well, the snowmobile riding also is a mecca for people. So folks travel here from the Midwest. This group of 5 had actually met each other in avalanche courses over time. They were from Indiana, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And kind of cool getting to know these guys, how they'd work it. They had sled trailers. They'd drive their sled over start of the season, park them, or they owned a house that they would return to. These guys were shredders. You know, they were committed to being here. They had summer work that allowed that. And the accident in question here occurred about I think it's a 14-mile ride from the trailhead. So, advance. So you can see the site here, the accident site. This is obviously a summertime image, but there's a safety shelter right down here. The stream bed kind of runs north to south. Roly-poly terrain in here. There's really big, complex alpine terrain within miles of this that's easily accessed by the same trailhead. These folks had been pretty careful during the stormy period and elevated danger to stay in mellower terrain. This day they were starting to step out, but only a little bit, honestly. This avalanche was on a northwest-facing slope, right about 8,100 feet, where the danger was considerable this day. At the upper elevation. At their elevation, it was moderate. Prior to this, 2 days prior to this, we'd had 20 to 30 inches of snow as a good walloping, 2 inches of water. 24 inches were recorded at the Commissary Ridge Station, which is about 2.5 miles to the northeast, 3.5 miles. Also of concern was this layer, or this new snow was falling on a persistent weak layer that we were a little still pretty wary about. In this case, wind slabs were all around the compass rose. So we had winds that backed around from all directions, cross-loading and loading slopes. Most of the avalanche activity during this period was limited to the wind slabs. The snow fell in enough of a kind of a trickle that the weak layers adjusted to it, so we didn't see many natural avalanches, except for these. So right outside of town here on the buttes, and a couple days prior, I believe the Taco Bell slide had slid, if you know where that is, right in town. Basically, it was pretty weak snow with near-surface facets. Not a whole ton of snow falling down at those lower elevations, but enough and enough wind that we were getting some avalanches. So you can see these debris piles here, generally like D1, D1.5, basically the same size avalanches that killed Alex. Yeah, you've seen that before. So what was also very interesting here, and this subject comes up a lot with our historical data and kind of the usefulness of these plots and charts and graphs to relay trends. You would think looking at that compass road, well, geez, northeast seems, or northwest octet seems pretty good, right? There's just 3 of 174 avalanches the whole season to this period had occurred on that aspect. Well, one of them was fatal, and the other one was probably the biggest avalanche we had and most significant on Mount Albright, where D3 ripped. So be careful what you interpolate into your travel by looking at those kind of charts. And this is, kind of the sciencey way of looking at the snowpack. Anybody probably uses this. This is something we have to do as professionals to kind of reduce the avalanche, the snowpack, into something digestible and shareable. But that's, you can see where the weak layers broke. Didn't mean to advance it, but that's okay. Who wants snow pilots up there for long? Can we play the video?
Just hit next.
Okay.
I'm here in Poker Flats, Poker Creek area, out of Smith Fork. There was a fatal avalanche at this location yesterday. I'm standing on a northwest facing slope where the avalanche was triggered. We have a wind slab here, pretty soft on top, a little firmer here, and ice crust from the rain and the storm snow this week, and then that layer of snow that fell after January 26th. And down here we have a very thin, very weak crust with faceted snow beneath and above. That's the failure layer that this avalanche was triggered on. 5 riders were in this drainage riding, and one rider crossed the slope, side hill, down near the bottom of the slope, and brought the slope down on top of him. He ended up face down in the creek with his sled on top of him, and took his party almost an hour and a half to get to him. 67 feet in snow on top. As you can see from the terrain, we had clear signs of wind loading from multiple aspects. There's cornices facing both directions. Winds howled here a couple days ago and yesterday even. And you can see that lots of terrain is cross-loaded at 8,100 feet, and there are also natural avalanches outside of Afton and some of the drainages there. So, as you're out and about, remember this avalanche occurred on a pretty darn stubborn layer. It's hard to reach in many locations, but it can still pop out with some energy on that layer of facets. So be careful out there. Remember, moderate avalanche hazard still includes the potential to trigger an avalanche. Most fatalities occur during moderate or considerable avalanche danger. So be careful if you're out this weekend, particularly as the sun starts heating up the snow on a sunny day, which are coming over the weekend.
hard results.
Yep. That's about fairly light.
So I think I overstated how easy and how obvious it was to note signs of wind loading during that event. That was kind of a hurried video to get it out that day. We didn't find out about this avalanche at all until the following day, and we were going out riding anyway somewhere else and diverted to go down there. So in our haste to get it out, I think I overstated how obvious those signs of wind loading was, and that was part of my point, was that these guys, this avalanche is really small. They'd seen no signs of avalanches, and we saw no signs of any other avalanches that day anywhere in this zone. Also, as a rider approaching the slope, he couldn't really see any signs of wind loading. Again, all he could see is a pretty darn small slope. If you look closely up and left, you can see a tiny cornice, but just barely. And they were doing a lot of things right this day. That's his line of approach on this on the slope, and he triggered it somewhere right around here. You can see this vertical fall is probably 20 feet. He managed to pull his ripcord on his airbag pack, and but obviously it doesn't really work if you're not tumbling, and inverse jet segregation and all that doesn't start working. So did not help him out in this case. Basically his sled got pushed over a almost 6-foot bank of snow. Snow poured in initially, so his sled, he landed on the snow, not in the creek, and his riders were just behind him. One had been trying to do a re-entry kind of move, pretty expert move, and was digging himself out, but it was on his way. Second rider right behind Alex saw him, his airbag deployment, then kind of lost visibility, immediately rode his sled across that debris onto the other side, started a beacon search, got a 11-meter figure, third rider arrived, also started searching, quickly found the lowest reading of 1.8 meters, or 6 feet. Pretty bad news for anybody involved in that scenario. They confirmed the probe strike was actually Alex, and started digging. Obviously, the digging is brutal when it's flat and you're that deep. Even a 3-footer survivable burial is going to be super hard to excavate when it's flat, right? Because you're just having to shovel snow up and over. Can't use any conveyor strategic shoveling moves like conveyor shoveling or other strategies like starting downhill and working into the slope. Those two riders started digging, and after a few minutes, the one guy took a break to use his radio to call the other two, who they were going to meet for lunch at that safety shelter just a couple miles away. One of those guys proceeded to the accident scene to start digging. The other used a base station radio that exists there specifically for calling for help. So they called for help, 911, got Star Valley Rescue on the way. Went back to continue digging, and remarkably, it seems very likely that within 30 minutes they had his face exposed and airway, checked for a carotid pulse, but he had in fact already died. Star Valley SAR got there. I think it took them, it's like an hour to get there, hour and a half. To get to the trailhead and ride in. Took him another hour to dig the sled out. Alex was buried by his own, pinned by his sled. So they had to dig out, they dug to his airway, still couldn't get him out as they dug more of him out, and then they had to dig out the entire sled to lift the sled to get him unpinned. It was just such a small slope. So the failure layer was here, just did a little cross section while I was there. That's the layer of facets, just barely discernible among a bunch of other layers in the snow. You could feel it with a credit card, but it's pretty hard to see. Some of the takeaways for me were basically that small size of the slope, and it feels as if, it's something that, you could make that mistake, I think. And these guys saw no signs of avalanches, so crossing over the terrain trap seemed a little more reasonable. The takeaways for me is just maintaining that spatial or the situational awareness at all times is really, really tough, I think, for anyone. And, these guys had further limitations on their travel, right? They had the stream bank that you could not ride across. There were no crossings in that area, so they were pretty limited towards, they're kind of funneled into that terrain. There was a bigger, easier, workaround to get to that safety shelter, but, his decision at the time seemed fairly reasonable. And just as a sidebar, we, assessed and skied the slope across the way to get the photos the next day. So pretty much an outlier. This is a locally known terrain trap. Some of the local avalanche instructors talk about it specifically, that slope specifically, and it's mostly these gap-driven winds that kind of a unique situation where the wind is funneled and there's a little Venturi effect right there that defies any wind direction, right? Summit winds might be going one direction and they pass through this gap and create a wind slab where you don't expect it. So now that I brought everybody down, what about this? Let's safely ride. Let's shred this year, huh? Questions? I'm going to go on to BTAC updates if nobody has questions on the incident. All right, I guess I nailed it. So updates this year, we've got the people shown. We, in addition to our the staff we had last year who are now permanent federal employees, which is, I don't know, worthy a round of applause or maybe just maybe condolences that they have to work for the federal government, depending on how you're leaning here. But we're happy to have them on board and have their support. And all kidding aside, that's a victory for all of us. We've added, our foundation has thrown money our way to add another person, which is great. So Noah McCorkle, if anyone knows him, he's an Exum guide. He's been living in the Valley for a while. Super good guy, GIS master's degree. He's joining us. The park position, funded by the park, this person works as a regular forecaster for BTAC. Just another one of our team, gets out snowmobiling as well. Travis Baldwin, he's joining us. So happy to have him. And you can see I'm plugging in some folks in a part-time sort of way. Fitz is going to be available a couple days a week. Happy to have him on board. He was here a couple years ago, and he's forecast at the Chugach, and super fun to be in the field with, and definitely knows the snow. And then additionally, we're really trying to target some of these more challenging areas to forecast. Like our team is pretty committed to field verification of forecasts. So we like to, ride, and some of these places where we ride is pretty rowdy. Aaron Case is going to be helping us as well. Adam Hansen is a fire captain down in Thane. He's going to get out and help us ride. And then our snow ranger up in Togety and here will also ride a couple days a week. So really, really trying to leverage the fact that probably everyone in this room, well, great, let's see some hands. Who's submitted an observation last year? Who submitted like more than 3? Okay, I'd like to see more hands up than that. Well, to incentivize that, this year we'll be giving out prizes for big observation makers, whoever gives the most or the best or something like that. We had 775 observations last year. Most of them happen around here in the Tetons, and we're trying to change that, push them a little to the more remote areas. Additionally, this year, I think hand in hand with forecasting is outreach events. So we're going to do trailer talks at trailheads with our sweet heated trailer. There may be adult beverages involved at the end of the riding day. Obviously off the clock. We're going to do avalanche awareness talks and state of the snowpack talks. We have those scheduled in Victor at High Point Cider once a month. And then we're going to do some in Afton and Thane and Pinedale. They tend to be around breweries. I don't understand why that's happening. There's some just luck, I guess, but and yeah, so stepping up to that. You know, it's a lift. Our foundation is working on that. But some of the other things, I'm about to get the hook already. Dang. So we're changes to the website. You can add your name to an observation. You can add your affiliation. You can upload videos still. Well, not upload them. You can add a link. We've got data visualization tools that are kind of in line with a snowpack tracker now that people like. Same kind of radial plot. And instability and avalanches over time, pretty useful. This is making a great database for the entire country now, 17 to 22 forecast centers using that tool, so good data mining to be had. This is kind of a fun little observation that John Waters sent us from High Mountain Heli of a human-triggered avalanche going on, and this spun our head around on the forecast. So super important that if you get situations like this to send us that observation. Your observation literally could save someone's life. Forecast boundaries, that's the next big thing for us. And here's a heat map of observations over time in our 7,000 square mile forecast area. That's like, how big is Rhode Island? I think it could fit in there a couple times, but and those are our fatalities during that same time period since 2010. So we've got some work to do getting observations from some of those areas, and what that'll look like going forward in addition to the new weather stations needed to support that remains to be seen. But clearly, you know, maybe some revised forecast areas are in order, and we'll be working towards that. I'm reaching out to longtime locals, and anybody with an opinion I'm ready to listen to, as long as don't forecast, because it makes people come go skiing or something like that, which I hear occasionally. So this is a 30-year norm this is a proxy for snowpack depth. We don't really have a great model that I know about how does the snow play out, but a 30-year normal of winter month snowfalls kind of paints a picture for you. Some of the hot spots where we get the most snow, which may or may not be the most avalanches, but certainly it's complex here. We've got a lot of weather systems going on and at least two different distinct snowpack regimes, you know, continental right to intermountain, and sometimes it feels like maritime when it's just puking snow day after day and it's all stable and no avalanches are happening, but you would think they are. And so we're considering a lot, you know, including our numbers to how we handle these forecast zones and ensure accurate forecasts by getting out into the field. For people, which is sometimes has been the norm here, really for such a big area, doesn't quite do it. So we're looking at all those factors and working on a plan, which you're going to hear about more. Well, not the plan, but kind of the problem from Ethan and Gabrielle's panel today. So thanks to our foundation for really stepping up. Before I get the hook, just want to thank them. I've asked a lot in the last, and I've asked a lot of the community really with the changed forecast. And again, apologies, I'm not a project manager with IT. So yes, last year was a little rocky, but we did prove that there's a lot to like about that website, and 775 observations was a big success. So more stoke.
Take one question. I see you, Suze.
What will happen for you all if there's a prolonged shutdown?
Oh, government shutdown question.
On your own, I'm going rock climbing. No. Most of the rest of the, we'll be accepted employees. So we are like law enforcement officers or whatever, we work, and actually it's your contributions and the foundation's money and Wyoming State Trails that give us that pay code that lets us get paid ultimately when the government starts again. So we'll have no paycheck while we're shut down, but yeah, we go skiing and riding anyway. So yes, you're welcome. You can see me out, bend my ear out somewhere else.